Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week I wanted to talk about something that came up on stream recently, and I've talked about this before, but I don't think I've talked about it here, and that is the power of making friends. And I know that sounds really kind of lame, but it's also really important when it comes to managing and creating a business based on your creative output. What I mean by this is that it's very hard to get in touch with people who are interested in your work. And the best way to do that is word of mouth. And the best way to get word of mouth is to have friends in the positions who are able to talk to other people who might want to commission you. And every time I talk about this, I also have to mention that this isn't some kind of sociopathic, I'm going to become your friend simply because you are in this position. This is making genuine friendships with people and enriching your life through that. The best example I have is the way I got my first job as a music for indie game developers. I was hanging out in an IRC channel for Starbound back when it was still in beta, and I made friends with several people in that chat room, but and some of those friendships moved over to Twitter and stuff like that. But what happened is I released an album. 13 is my favorite prime. I think that was back in 2013, 2014. And Dell, one of the friends that I made in the Starbound IRC, she listened to the album and realized that the music that I made was something that would work well in a game that she's starting to work on, which was the Maker's Eden, which ended up being my first paid gig as a musician for indie art, for indie gamers, or indie developers. It's still early here. And that connection wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been outgoing and friendly and just trying to make connections in the world in which I wanted to work in. So if you wanted to work with, podcasters to make not album art, but, art for each episode, or if you wanted to work with basically what I'm saying is if you want to work with somebody, find the genre that they're working in and integrate yourself into that genre. And that doesn't mean be spammy about it, but just be interested in the genre itself, which should be pretty effortless if you are intending on making art for that genre. So in my case, I like making music for games, and I started learning about game development, and that kind of got me hooked on making games in general. And I think that that's pretty cool. And the big thing about this is that if you do have friends in that area and you do good work, which I'm assuming you do, they will tell other people, and all of those other people are potential clients. And that's a really huge boon when it comes to getting your name out there. The best example I have to offer from this is, especially when it comes to like submitting your portfolio or your resume or your demo reel to a company who's looking. Imagine that you have a neighbor, and you need to borrow a cup of sugar from that neighbor, and another person down the hall also needs to borrow a cup of sugar. The only difference between these two scenarios is that you play like poker or something every night with this neighbor. And because you know this person, you know this neighbor, they will more likely give you the cup of sugar than the stranger down the hall, because you're familiar with that person. It's a safer option. It's a safer choice. And that's like basic psychology, I guess. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's something that I keep in mind when I do work with people, because if I know them and they know me, then it's a much easier choice for them to choose to work with me because there's less risk. And even though this creative stuff is, fun and designed to be an expression and all that other stuff, a lot of creative stuff, when it comes to commissioning people are more thinking of it like a business than a fun expression. And when it comes to business, the biggest thing that you want to do is mitigate risk. And if you can take the safer option, which, of course, obviously your music or your art is good too, but the safer option when it comes to who to work with, most likely they'll take that option. So, yeah, I would just make friends, be personable, learn to talk to people, talk about yourself, and just get out there. And I know that this is a bit of a privileged opinion because, social anxiety is a thing. I have social anxiety too. But I know that this is not something that everybody can do right away. But the nice thing about the internet is that you can have asynchronous conversations, like on Twitter or on Reddit, where you can respond at your own pace or your own leisure. And I think that helps a lot because that still allows you to get your personality out there, but it doesn't have the anxiety of a face-to-face conversation. So I feel that it's just really important to get out there and find the type of people that you want to work with and then make friends with them. So thank you so much for supporting this Patreon and listening to this episode. I genuinely appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next time. Be remarkable.